The average restaurant meal contains 1,300 calories, which is insane. Are you in a place of overly restricting just mentally? Weekends lead to non-adherence when it comes to your weight loss plan. Welcome back to the Strong and Nourished podcast. We have gone video and I'm super excited. I probably have so much to learn on this front, but we're going to just have fun with it this time and see how it goes. I'm really excited for today's episode because we are going to be talking about weight loss and your weekends. Weekends are one of the biggest downfalls I see people and their weight loss efforts. So it's a topic worth addressing, exploring, and really learning some strategies for. Your weekends, when we, include Friday night, which let's be real, that's the weekend too. That accounts for 30% of your week. And if you're throwing away 30%, you're going to really struggle to get the results that you want. So I'm going to talk about the factors that are really affecting your adherence with regards to the weekend. I'm going to talk about what adherence really means. Then I'm going to talk about ways to combat those common struggles that we all kind of run into when it comes to our weekends. Okay, so kind of the biggest overarching theme is the weekends lead to non-adherence when it comes to your weight loss plan. And that's kind of fine and dandy, but what does adherence even mean? A lot of people, I'm a tracking forward nutritionist. Tracking macros is so illuminating. However, when not practiced the best way, it can really be a detriment to some people. When we track macros, adherence is plus or minus 10%. We're not looking at perfection. We're not looking at everything to the calorie, everything to the gram. That is so insane, unrealistic. That's some bodybuilder type BS that I don't stand for. It really depends on the weight loss client, but I don't even look at fat and carbs that seriously unless it's someone who's already lean and is trying to get ripped. But I'm mainly looking at calories and protein when it comes to adherence. And again, plus or minus 10% is a pretty big buffer. And the reason we have that buffer is because that's the way our bodies work. If you're cutting and you're at 1,700 calories, if you're at 1,750 for that day, you're not just going to not be in a deficit. That's insane, So it's really important for me to make that distinction of what adherence really is so that you can, when you're deviating from plans in a very natural way, or maybe in a way that's too much, you know exactly what your buffers are. And that's what I really like to think of macro tracking as. Macro tracking, that's really what it is it's just guidelines. It's not this exact, you have to hit this on the dot, you have to nail this or else, period, full stop. Okay, so that's what adherence is. Now let's talk about some of the struggles that I see. I'm going to go over 6, and I'm going to go over both the struggle itself and ways to navigate around it before I move on to the next one. The first one is meals out. This is a big one, and I have a pretty firm stance on this, and that is that if you are in a weight loss phase, you cannot eat out more than twice per week. And there are several reasons for that. One is the average restaurant meal contains 1,300 calories, which is insane. Restaurant portions are always larger. They have lots of added oils, added sauces, added things that aren't actually filling you up, but that are driving calories up. And when we say the average calories are 1,300, that means that there's a lot of meals that are more than that. And again, it might be a meal that is probably something similar to what you could have had at home, but it's a larger portion and it has a bunch of other things that are calorically dense added to it. So that's a really important distinction when we're talking about eating out. And I like to say 2 meals out per week because when you eat out, you have to be so strategic about it. You have to set aside a certain portion of calories to make sure that you are not completely blowing your load on that meal out. And the reality is that meal out might be more calorically dense and might not fill you up as much because of the fact there are these sauces, oils, and things added that aren't actually satiating. And so you might be eating more but feeling less full. And if we're doing that 5 times per week, you are never going to see results. Not to mention if you're doing brunch, happy hour, dinner, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So my biggest strategy for this is cap them to 2 and plan them. If you don't have any social plans Monday through Friday, you can afford to eat out Saturday and Sunday. And I want you to build out your entire Saturday and Sunday worth of nutrition so that you know what you're having for that meal is fitting within your overall plan. However, if you have a spontaneous happy hour with friends on a Tuesday, you have to accommodate that for the rest of your week. And you also have to know that anything you eat out is going to be more than what you have at home and track that meal accordingly. Okay, so that covers meals out. Very natural segue into alcohol. Alcohol is a big thing that people indulge and overindulge in on the weekends. And when it comes to your kind of tabs on alcohol when in a weight loss phase, I really like to keep it to 2 drinks per week. We can really push 3 to 4 if you're a male, but for a female, we have to keep it at 2. And let's talk about why. Alcohol is very calorically dense, very, very calorically dense, and it does absolutely nothing for your satiety. It's not going to fill you up. In fact, it's going to make you hungrier. And the reason for that is because it makes your blood sugar skyrocket and then it will plummet. And when you get that low blood sugar response, that is when you start to crave, all of those French fries, that burrito, where you feel like you need to eat so much more food than you actually need. That is because of that blood sugar response from alcohol. I've heard of some people taking a very toxic approach of, I'm just going to drink my calories. Please don't do that, okay? That's really unhealthy. And I would say things like that in my 20s, and I don't drink anymore. So you can kind of do the math there. So yeah, 2 drinks per week max, 3 to 4 if you're a male. You really have to keep it here because it's not going to fill you up. It's literally going to make you hungrier. And there are so many calories in alcohol. Okay, that brings me to my third, which is other substances of choice. I personally have less experience with this, but I know that other substances can really drive up your hunger. And again, my strategy for this is, don't during this time. You have to really understand that if you're in a weight loss period, you have to be a lot stricter with yourself. And I say this because you shouldn't be in a weight loss period forever. Once your weight loss period is over, you can have so much more regulation in your life and moderation, which is the ultimate. Okay, fourth one is the I deserve this mentality. I wish I could tell you didn't used to be the queen of this. This used to be like, I used to have a PhD in the I deserve this mentality. And it was the end of a week and you just needed that dopamine hit from food or alcohol or anything else that's going to completely sabotage the goal that you have in mind. This is a mentality that takes a lot to unwind. And there's kind of 2 things that I see coming up when we talk about the I deserve this mentality. One is, how does your time during the week look? Is your plan during the week too restrictive? Even if your plan is not too restrictive, how is your mental state? Are you in a place of overly restricting just mentally of, I can't eat this, I can't eat that, just being so unnecessarily strict with yourself? One of the reasons I love macro tracking is because it shows you what you can fit into your day, not just what you can't. It shows you that you can have 3 squares of dark chocolate in a deficit and be fine because it's like 90 calories, It's not that much. And so if you're constantly beating yourself up for having those things, or you're telling yourself those are off limits, that can make you lead to a I deserve this mentality because you've been forcing yourself to not have those things during the week. And then the other thing is, like I said, your plan is too restrictive, which I would never give someone a plan that's so restrictive that they are unable to comply with their plan during the weekend. But yeah, that's one aspect. Another aspect is just dopamine dysregulation. And this is not like a you problem, this is a society problem. Everyone deals with problems with dopamine these days because you open your phone, you scroll, all of these things. I do this all the time. I open my phone, I'm on Instagram for 5 minutes, don't even realize it. Everyone does this. When it comes to doing this with food, that's where it can really sabotage your goals and it can really escalate into something else if not kind of checked. So my favorite strategy for this is coming up with like a dopamine bank. That's kind of what I call it. And it's things outside of food that really give you that internal feeling of joy and satisfaction. It could be a long bath. It could be a massage. It could be getting your nails done. And this takes practice. The dopamine hit you get from food, there's a reason that happens. And it's going to require more and more and more and more over time to get that same dopamine response. And so, really leveling with yourself and saying, I know I'm not going to feel quite as satisfied from this activity, and I have to sit in that discomfort while my dopamine system kind of re-regulates with practice and intention over time. So that's kind of one of those, the only way out is through, and it's tough and it's ongoing. And I promise you'll start to notice it in other areas of your life too. As someone who, has a virtual online business and I'm chronically online, I notice this so much with myself. And I still struggle with it with food sometimes. It's a very human thing. But being aware of it and finding strategies around it and continuing to practice it is the best way to navigate that mentality. Okay, we're down to our last two. Another one is lack of routine. Sometimes when people hit the weekend, they just change absolutely everything they're doing. And we need to curb this a little bit. I want you waking up similar times each day, going to bed similar times each day. If you usually wake up at 5 a.m. during the week and you're sleeping till 11 on the weekends, you are going to completely throw your hunger hormones out of whack, your meal times out of whack. And we need to establish a little bit more of a consistent routine. Some people, they're very active during the week, and then on the weekends, it's like they sit here and they don't leave that spot for 48 hours. And we need to find a healthier middle ground. And again, you're socializing. Maybe you're eating at different times, you're eating different foods. Again, I'm not telling you it has to look exactly like how it does during the week, but we need to have a healthy middle ground. I want you waking up and going to bed at similar times. I want you eating meals at similar times. The reason for this is because we have a hunger hormone called ghrelin. And as our body's hunger cues become more regular, it will rise in anticipation of a mealtime. And so if we're not eating meals at regular times, hunger hormone might just get completely dysregulated. You might notice, oh, maybe I'm not hungry here. And then a couple hours later, you're so completely starving that it leads you to overeating. And yeah, if you're getting 10,000 steps during the week and then you get 3,000 on the weekends, that is going to really throw off your energy expenditure, and it's just not great for your results. So we need to have a healthy kind of compromise of keeping some good parts of your weekday routine while still allowing yourself to relax, take some time away from work, things like that. Okay, last one is probably my favorite because it's one that I have struggled with so much. I don't really struggle with it anymore, and that is social pressure. I'm going to spend some more time on this because I really can empathize with anyone who feels this struggle, because I used to be so impacted by the words and thoughts of others in social situations when I was trying to make a change for myself. And this is what I wish someone had told me sooner, and that is that what people are saying is a reflection of what's inside them. It's not a reflection of you at all. If someone, if you reach for something healthy at a social gathering and someone says, just live a little, they're judging themselves for living too much. I promise it has nothing to do with you. I mean, how absurd is it when you really think about it, that if someone in your life is trying to make a change that is healthy, that you have something to say about it? Why would that bother you unless it's bothering you about yourself, that you don't feel like you're living up to your own healthy standards that you're not adhering to? Another one is when people make comments about if you're not drinking alcohol. I just want to encourage you to just straight up lie. Say you're on antibiotics. Say you have an early morning. Just make something up. Truly, have something else in your hand and say it's vodka. Whatever you have to do to get people off your back. Maybe you tend to always think of the best comebacks after the fact. Maybe you're slicker than me. In that moment, say the uncomfortable things. Just be sassy. Just shut them down. But really remember that it's a reflection of them. No person who is well adjusted and feels confident in their own habits is going to judge you for yours, period. I've noticed this, I used to, before I stopped drinking, I was the biggest judge of people who didn't drink. Now I don't say anything about it because I respect everyone's choices, whether they choose to drink or not. Okay, we're going to have to start wrapping this one up because my daughter is getting fussy. But yeah, when it comes to social pressure, just continue to unravel the narrative that it's about you, because it's not actually about you. And make it funny, make it uncomfortable, say something weird. If you have some good comebacks that you've given someone, please send them to me, drop them in the comments, because I always think of the best ones after the fact or when I'm not in that situation, because I go into that fight or flight mode and get really uncomfortable. Despite me talking a big game right now, I'm more of the type who I would just have something else in my hand and not draw any attention to it. But yeah, those are my best. That's my best advice for navigating your weekends with weight loss. There's a lot of coaches these days who will put in their bio, lose weight without giving up the pizza and beer. I just refuse to be that person. I really want to be honest, transparent, and level with my clients, with you, about what it takes to actually lose weight. And mastering your weekends is one of them. Okay, my daughter's fussy, so we got to go. But I hope you enjoyed this episode. Hope you enjoyed us going to video, and excited to see you next time.